Hey guys, IJustRengar here, and I'm coming at you with 10 tips to 10-0 your placement games. Tip number 1, narrow a champion pool for yourself. This is really important because it'll tell beforehand what you'll be playing, which allows you to do a couple different really good things. The first thing that you can do is set up the optimal rune page for each champion that you want to play. This is really good because there's a couple people that don't really think about rune pages too much, and they either use the default or they use the wrong rune page. And if you optimize that, you can have a difference in win rate of up to like 3 or 4, even sometimes 5%, just by making sure that you have the right runes. The second thing that you can do is to practice the specific mechanics for each champion you want to play, and learn them so you won't mess up when the time comes. No more failed Lee Sin ward hops, or insect kicks, although those are a little bit harder. And the third thing that you'll have is the knowledge of your champion that should be either equal to or greater than the enemy's knowledge of their own champion, which will either level the playing field for you or give you the advantage over your opponent. Tip number 2 is going to be to go into the game with a good physical and mental health. So in a lot of these types of videos that I see, people have these tips all separated, and these tips have almost nothing to do with gameplay. So I'm just going to get all of these out of the way right now, that way the rest is pure gameplay. This entire tip is about mindset, so basically make sure of a couple things before you play. First, make sure you aren't tilted, tired, hungry, needing to use the bathroom, thirsty, or high off of something. Second, make sure that you're comfortable, have a good mindset, and have a drink ready, preferably water, and definitely not alcohol. The third tip is going to be to play a warm-up game beforehand. This warm-up game can either be on a smurf or on your main for normals. The purpose of this game is not to win, but to maintain a stable mindset and to focus on core mechanics. These are games where you do not let yourself go on autopilot and instead constantly think about the game and what you need to do next, focusing as much as possible on things like CSing, map awareness, and where you need to be. 4. Do not go on autopilot. A lot of mistakes I see from people that I coach, and even myself at times, is autopiloting. This is when you stop thinking about the game itself and you just start playing badly due to, not focusing. This is what can take your skill level from being Plat 1 when you focus to Plat 5 when you're unfocused, and for me, I feel like this is elevated even more so. I have games myself where I play them like a Masters, because that's where I'm rated, but I also have games where I play like I'm a boosted D5 player because I just let my mind wander and start thinking about something completely irrelevant to the game. So make sure that you're keeping your mind on track and you're focused on that CSing, map awareness, everything like that. Tip number 5 is going to be to use the coach yourself tactic for bad games. One method I really like to use for these important games is the coach yourself tactic. If you're unfamiliar with this tactic, I have a video on my channel about it, but the gist of it is that you don't really need to purchase a coach because you can typically decipher most of the major issues through just checking CS, kill participation, and KDA itself, as well as how often you took towers and objectives. It's still beneficial to check over your VOD of games you do badly on though, and review why you did bad. Then, focus on fixing that in your next game. Tip number 6 is going to be to stop playing after you lose. Now, I know this is a little bit counterintuitive to the title, but just keep something in mind for me. If you do lose, every single pro player has lost at one point in their career, as well as myself and literally every other League player that has played more than 10 or so games. Just try not to tilt, and just make sure that you're staying focused. It can be hard though, and contrary to what you may think, everyone gets tilted. And sometimes it's only slight, and you can keep playing with only a minor effect, and other times it's a large effect. Think Tyler 1. Think about it like this though. These 10 games determine where you'll start for the season. Each one of these games could put you up or down a full rank, which would otherwise take you 7 to 8 more wins than losses to climb out of, which can be a lot of grinding, especially if your win rate is just between 50 and 55%. After you lose one of these games, even if you're still feeling pretty good, just stop. Wait an hour, spend it either in normals, reviewing your game, or doing something to de-stress like reading a book or exercising. Untilt and then get right back into the games. It's not worth playing another game, even slightly tilted, if the extra hour between them could save you over 10 hours of grinding in the future. And honestly, just a side note, probably a lot more. I've seen a lot of people stuck in the same rank for 50 hours worth of grinding because they have to spend 100 games just to get out. So focus as hard as you can. Tip number 7 is going to be know the meta before you begin. This is important because it lets you know about a lot of things, such as if the champions you're playing are viable, what the enemies will pick, and what your own team will pick. Well, what they're likely to pick at least. The reason that this is so important is because you can abuse each one of these things, and I'm going to show you how. So, first, we'll start with the champion that you're going to pick. If the champion you're playing isn't meta, you can start using a meta champion, or you can know that you're going to be playing at a slight disadvantage, but your champion's most likely not going to be banned. If you know what your team is likely to pick, you can practice on champions that are more likely to better your team comp and increase synergy. And finally, if you know what the enemy is likely to pick, you can have all the meta counter picks practiced beforehand and use them to their full potential, granting you a devastatingly strong advantage. Now, I'd recommend waiting 5 to 7 days before starting in on ranked just to learn the meta of Season 8. It's a lot better to lose to an OP strat or champion in a normal game than it is to forget what's strong in a ranked game, accidentally ban Heimerdinger because you run out of time to ban, and play against that totally busted Xin Zhao abuser. Just remember guys, spend as much time as you need because these games that you play in placements could save you literally hundreds of hours depending on how many you win or lose. Tip number 8 is going to be to analyze each game before you begin. If you guys have been watching my Unranked to Diamond series, you know how often I do this and why I do it.
Coming back at you with the next game, just in a little pregame analysis right now. Okay, so looking top lane, Yasuo versus Jace. This matchup looks like it's probably going to be like a little bit like back and forth. If Jace is pushed up, I'm going to try to gank for Yasuo because he does have a little bit of CC, especially at 6 actually. But if not, I'm probably going to try to avoid that lane unless I can get a good lane gank off.
This has a lot of things to it. I primarily use it to look for gankable lanes and where I should be focusing. This enables me to make a plan early, and, if you do it well enough, you can predict what the enemy jungler's path will be and plan around that. If you can do this efficiently, along with the next tip, you'll be on a path to succeed and to succeed really well. Tip number 9 is going to be to figure out your win condition. Figuring out your win condition is one of the most essential steps to getting better at League and to winning. A win condition is going to vary from team comp to team comp and from champion to champion. Here's a couple examples. So let's say you're playing as Kog'Maw. You know that you deal a ton of damage late but aren't as strong early, so all you need to do is to make sure that you survive laning phase, even if it means giving up a little bit of CS. And then, when it gets to mid and late game, you'll be able to dish out tons of damage, which will win fights that will give you objectives that will eventually destroy the enemy nexus. Another quick example would be playing as Lee Sin, who's kinda opposite to Kog. Lee Sin is very strong early, so instead of his win condition being going even in lane, like Kog'Maw's, Lee Sin needs to snowball with his powerful early game in the jungle. That way he can have enough of a gold and experience lead that he can be relevant later on. One mistake that I see a lot of lower elo players make, and even sometimes players in higher elos, is when you're playing a champion like Kog'Maw, let's say you're going up against an early game enemy bot lane, like let's say you're against a Thresh and a Jhin for example, all you need to do in that lane is not die to them early. Or if you're playing like against, say, a Kalista. If you don't die to them early, and you just stay within 10 or so CS of them, you're winning the lane because you're going to be more efficient later on. So if you're even in gold, you're going to be doing better. Just because of how your kits are built, and how your base damage versus their base damage, versus your ratios versus their ratios, how those work all together. Also, an example of team comps. Some team comps, like if you have a Tryndamere, will win more if you have a split push element, if you're splitting, which is the Tryndamere. And other team comps, let's say you have an Amumu and you have a MF, would be a lot better at team fighting. So know your team comp's specific win condition based on the champions that you have. Tip number 10 is going to be to communicate effectively. These 10 games are going to mean more than any other games this season, and so you need to make sure that you are effectively communicating with your teammates as best you can. This means you need to make sure you're looking at the minimap constantly, pinging if you see an enemy gank, an enemy ward placement, or if you see an enemy rotation coming. When you're backed, if you're so inclined as to shot call, creating a strategy for your team to follow and typing it to them on your way back to lane or to the jungle can be really effective. Make sure that you ping a lot. I don't think that I've used just one ping in a long time, so treat that ping button like a 5-year-old playing cookie clicker. Keep in mind, this does not mean to spam ping laners when they die or when they make a bad play. All that does is tilt a member of your team and makes it far more likely to lose the game due to them doing stuff like that in the future because they're tilted. It's just what happens. You ping a lot because a lot of people won't focus or they won't be thinking too hard, and these pings really help snap them back into it and really communicate, do this now. It's like your mom telling you to clean your room. It's probably not going to happen, but if she nags you enough, you'll do it eventually, and especially if she says it 6 times in a row. Quick recap. 1. Narrow yourself a champion pool. 2. Make sure you're playing with a healthy mindset. 3. Play a warm-up game beforehand. 4. Don't let yourself go on autopilot. 5. Use the coach yourself tactic for bad games. 6. Stop playing after a loss. 7. Know the current meta. 8. Analyze each game before you begin. 9. Figure out your win condition. And 10. Communicate effectively. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I've had a lot of great support recently, and I really appreciate everything all of you do for me. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Feel free to like, subscribe, or dislike if you didn't like the video, but please tell me why. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments, and I read and respond to every single one. Thank you all again so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Good luck in placements.